Hi, my name is Richard Crawford, host of the Supply and Demand Show, where we delve into the dynamic world of the global supply chain and we navigate through the complexities, disruptions, and innovations that shape this vital network of interconnected businesses. From sourcing raw materials to delivering finished products, we'll uncover the challenges that arise at each stage and explore the strategies for optimizing efficiency and sustainability. And each week, we'll chat with our guests and highlight a specific supply chain event. And of course, I'm joined each week by my co-host and resident supply chain expert, Kareem Kafuri, CEO of the Atlas Network. Audience claps, roars. How are you doing, buddy?
Good, Richard. How you doing? Everything going well?
Good, my friend. I'm doing good.
You look like you been falling asleep by the pool after having too many scotches. I think.
When you're watching the eclipse, they tell you to look through the glasses, but they don't tell you to put sunscreen on your face. So,
yes.
If you're going to stare at the sun for half an hour or 2 hours, maybe they should have suggested putting sunscreen on for us people that forgot. Anyway.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But
so what's going on in your world?
Everything's going well, just doing some traveling, just came back from China, and that was a great experience with Alibaba and Hangzhou.
Yep.
We're going to have a little episode about that later on, where we'll cover sort of the things that we saw and experienced out there. Always great to be back in Asia, in Shanghai, right over here. It's a big part of my sort of heart and soul. Had my team who I hadn't seen in a few years. We hadn't seen each other really in about 3 years because of pandemic. And it was great. Did a lot of team building, great exercises, went to Shanghai Disney, went bowling, just did a lot of things that just to celebrate basically us all being together again. But it was great and got a lot of conferences coming up in May and in June. It's going to be a busy summer. Supply chain as always. We just keep rocking and rolling, doing the things that we do. So
Shanghai Disney. I've got a couple of friends who are Disney files. They're just like, I've got one friend who, if he has a layover in LA, like a layover of 4 hours, he will run down to Disney and then come back again for his flight. You guys are all crazy, is what I'm saying. All right, so let's introduce our next guest, David Food. Now, David is a passionate supply chain advocate, strategist, innovator, thought leader, futurist, analyst, and educator, marketing expert, executive who unlocks potential by touching tomorrow today, and also a Gartner Peer Community Ambassador. David, a very, very warm welcome to the show. I like the tomorrow today part. Makes you sound like a time traveler.
I wish I was, but I love looking forward. I love looking to the future. So it's great to be with you, Richard and Kareem.
Well, thank you. And I believe you and David, you and Kareem have met before.
Yes, we have. Yeah, we had a bit of a joke about some golf, didn't we, Kareem? If I remember rightly.
Yeah, that's right. Dave and I, we know each other. We met on LinkedIn, which is, kind of the bringing the virtual to the real world together. Had a wonderful chat, had some sort of overlap in the fact that, I talked about how I was going to MIT and how I was going to the Crossroads 2024 event. And David knows Yoshi Sheffy and had sort of interacted with him from time that he had spent in Boston, and comes to the United States to do different kinds of work. And so, we definitely had some very nice overlap. And then I said, when I get back from Shanghai, when I get back from China, we have to have you on the show. You've got great insight. You've got a great, background and so on. And so, just really happy to have you on the show, Dave. So it's great
to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah. So I do have a question, and it's a topic that would require days and days of discussion, but I'm just curious from your point of view on kind of a macro level. You reside in the UK, that's correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
What does the supply chain world look like since Brexit? And I realize that's a very loaded question, but I'm just curious. I no longer live in the UK, and I'm just curious, top line, what it looks like now compared to what it was like before.
Well, I mean, journeying through leaving Europe was something that was, people planned for it. They didn't know what was actually happening. A lot of it happened last minute.
Yeah.
As a consequence, some things are still being worked through now. Some bad decisions that were made in a hurry mean that complicated paperwork has needed to be simplified. And as a consequence, there's been quite a lot of duplication of inventory, because now we're outside Europe, so people are saying, okay, we want stuff manufactured in Europe, and therefore it's got to be manufactured on the continent or vice versa. So it's certainly changed our thinking, and it's continuing to refine the way we do supply chain.
Yeah, I have another question too. We were at an event called Manifest a couple of months ago now. And we talked to a couple of organizations there, and one of them was a company that does the last mile via drone. Like they were using drones to basically deliver stuff on that last mile, as he described it. Is that popular yet in the UK?
People like it as a cutting edge experiment type thing, but I mean the reality is addresses are so much more complicated. If you've got you have blocks, avenues and streets, don't you, in the States, in North America? We have much less structured delivery mechanisms. So you can get easily lost in London because you go north and you go west and you go south and you go east and you don't end up back where you started. Whereas in the US, you would do. And as a consequence, things like drones, whether that's flying drones, sea drones, or even street-based drones, the question is, how do you deliver to an apartment in a block?
Yeah, exactly. And they have some of the same issues here, but you're right. It's like sometimes when you look at an Earth view over the UK, a lot of the streets are like spaghetti. So it's kind of tough. Whereas here there's a lot of grids. Plus, especially in Scotland, if you try to fly a drone in Scotland on any given day, it needs to be powerful because the wind will just blow it off course anyway.
Yeah. Right.
And then I was just going to say, there's also a whole bunch of things around laws and legality. What happens if a drone falls out of the sky? Who's responsible? It's the same with other things like 3D printing. We've still got to work out who's responsible for what, who's going to pay for what. If it fails, who's going to rectify it? They're all the challenges of kind of some of tomorrow's thinking today.
Well,
I tell you what,
the
area I grew up in, David, drone hunting would become a sport.
I was going to say though, to what David just said is that I just did an article recently which was on AI. I don't know if you saw it, David. It was in USA Today.
Yes.
Didn't see it. Saw it. But basically, it's all about this, and specifically, I was talking about AI, not just technology at large, but how do we take advantage of all of these amazing innovations that we have that can greatly accelerate the way that we do everything that we do, whether it's in business or in our lives and so on, if we don't really have the levels of protections to essentially safeguard against negative outcomes. And some of these outcomes you don't even really know until you put things in practice and say, all right, well, we flew that thing up in the sky, and as Richard said, people went around with slingshots and tried to knock it out of the air. So what are we doing about that? And so on and so forth. I mean, in the most rudimentary example. So I always find that it's not necessarily a barrier to advancement, but it's this sort of temperance between sort of racing at the future and how it actually will be done in a practical, methodical way that will actually benefit society more than create more detriments. And this balancing act basically between these two things of innovation versus, potential, societal detriment. And laws are going to be part of that. Certain levels of moral conduct will be part of that. I think there's going to be a lot of sort of things that you can write down on a piece of paper in black and white, and then things that just are sort of like the 10 Commandments. We just kind of are supposed to know what they are and have a sense of what's right and wrong. I just don't know if we all have the same moral compass. So if we don't, then things that, certain decisions are taken by certain groups could drastically impact at a scale that's unfathomable, just because of the way that technology and media and everything else proliferates in a way that was not the same in the past, So I'm very curious about, again, the future and the innovations that we talk about as it relates to supply chain and technology. but more so how we as humans are going to continue to evolve our understanding of how to interact with these things, how to adopt these things, how to protect ourselves and embrace. It's like protect and embrace both of these things.
Yes, because we don't want to slow things down, but we also want to have some governance and some protection. I mean, if you think about things like the world of testing, we live in such a complex world that, I've been in software for probably 20, 30 years, and beta testing now is done in a more public domain. Beta releases are put out there and you sign up and you do a beta release and you play around with it. And part of the reason for that is that effectively you're doing some of the last mile testing for the software companies, because it's not possible. I mean, I worked with a software company I worked for nearly 20 years ago now. We had a guy who had a problem and he said, I've got this problem. This is what happens with the new release of the software. And we couldn't recreate what he was doing. So he went to his factory, went into watched him using the computer, and he was leaning on the keyboards as he was typing certain things. So he's pressing a unique set of keys. I can't even remember what they were, but it's 4 or 5 keys together. And when you press those keys together, it caused the software to fall over. But it wasn't something you could replicate. Or something completely different. I suffer from hay fever, and I used to take Piriton when I was a child, and could not work out why certain times I was really struggling with the hay fever. Now, when you buy Piriton, it says do not take with grapefruit juice. I used to drink grapefruit juice for breakfast. How do you find that combination? They're crazy things, but it's the reality of, if we're going to take new ideas and take them into the world, there is going to be some failure. There are going to be some accidents. There are some risks, and we need to work out how to graciously journey through those things.
Yeah, how do you got to basically put the mouse in the mousetrap to basically make sure it works, right? In many ways.
I've run into my own grapefruit issues, David. I my cholesterol is quite high, so I take a little cholesterol medicine, and it says on the bottle the only thing on there it says you can't take is grapefruit juice, and I'm a huge Fresca fan. I don't know if anybody out there knows what Fresca is, but it's grapefruit juice. And I was like, oh, and it's just as well I read the bottle, because I would never have thought, why grapefruit juice? But anyway.
So you're wondering why your cholesterol never went down, and there it is.
I was like, why?
Fresca.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, let's, are you ready for the hot seat segment, David, is the question?
I think I'm as ready as I'm ever going to be.
All right. So let me just tell you the rules of that so we understand it. So we're going to ask you 3 questions, and the goal for you is to get as close to 5 minutes as you possibly can. Not necessarily under, or, you can go over if you want, but as close. Our reigning champion, who at this point I'm mentioning every show because she's very, very difficult to beat, is Katie Date, and she managed to do it in 4 minutes and 58 seconds. So there was a 2-second window for anybody to beat her. So the challenge is there, but one of these days I believe somebody's going to do it. Maybe it's today.
Okay, I'll give it a go.
All right, so what I'm going to do is I am going to start the stopwatch now. All right, David, why is planning so important, particularly for S&OP or IBP?
Well, planning's important, firstly, because people are trying to get a better and more stable applied strategy in their business. They're looking forward, trying to make sure that they're aligning their resources, their people, their finances to achieve strategic goals. And so planning needs to be a comprehensive decision that allows you over time to link those different parameters, constraints, opportunities together to help to drive towards something that's cohesive. The reason why S&OP, that's been around for a while, helps to pull that all together is sales and operations planning is typically a volume-based plan that pulls together as many departments as you can pull. Typically it's demand and supply, but then you might extend that into your supply chain, you might pull finance into that, you might pull marketing and sales into that. But it's about having a Rubik's Cube of data that enables you to make the right decisions and extrapolate those decisions into the future, and then understand the risks and opportunities that then come out of that plan.
My question is for you, David, is a lot of data. What are we going to do with all this data?
I call it data in the UK, if you forgive me, but
Sure.
some data, I don't know how we're going to use it. I mean, the granularity of data now, the real-time data that's coming through the computer, the behavioral stuff, if we scanned what I'm doing on screen now, we could pick up the gestures and probably make some interpretations of all those things. But if we just limit it to supply chain, supply chain is time bound. So, there's 47 parcels on the truck today. We deliver 2 more. There's now 45. Where is the truck? What's it carrying? What's the fuel consumption? There's a whole bunch of things. But in the kind of more traditional supply chain planning space, let me stay in my lane and in my zone. I would say the more granularity of data means that you can sharpen your pencil and make a more specific decision. And that enables you not only to drive better planning, but also be able to nuance opportunities. Because we can start to use things like AI to then say, okay, with all this data, let's give some flags and some warnings. There's something unusual going on over here. You need to look at this. We could start to drive some of that now. If we take all this data and try to manually process it through a human brain, I think we're lost in the long term. But from the opportunity of using the power of computing, pulling it together in ways, I think there will be insightful and new decisions that will be brought together in an intelligent way. The one point I would say is one of the issues is concurrency. How do you align all the data in a way that means that you're working on the same page? You're not looking at yesterday's data from one of your suppliers and tomorrow's data from one of your customers. You're looking at it through a lens that means you can make those intelligent decisions.
You're tracking pretty well, David. I'll say this. Why does everything seem to be getting faster and more complicated in SC planning?
In supply chain planning, I think it's getting faster because the user, the customer, is used to being able to get decisions and get things on their mobile phone. They can use their mobile phone to track things so easily. So the consumer expects business to be the same as their experience. And so they say, why can't I do in business what I can do on a mobile phone? That's an interesting question, especially with Gen Z coming through, Gen Z. But I would say part of the accuracy of all of this is to help to drive towards a significant plan that helps to drive better business outcomes and allows us to be maybe a bit more intelligent and a bit greener, caring for the planet a little bit more, maybe consuming less and reconsuming more. I think we could rebalance a whole bunch of things with the kind of speed of stuff that's coming.
You have a little bit of time left if you want to add anything.
I think the thing that I would add is that generally speaking, the green agenda is something that's really there to help to drive towards the capacity of thinking about planning. So we are truly being good custodians of our planet. I think supply chain has a massive part to play in that. And I think planning has a massive part to play in supply chain to achieve that.
Fantastic. And we will stop right there. Pretty good. Pretty good. You did not beat Katie. But no, I don't think anybody is, to be honest, unless if I was coming on the show, I would cheat. I would have a stopwatch in front of me and I would press it and I would look at it as I'm answering. Maybe I just gave a bunch of people a good cheat code.
Yeah, you did. You just, first of all, no one thinks to do that, Richard. we are honorable people on this show.
Of course we are. But
Richard, you know how to gain that, don't you? So rather than having the goal of 5, because the reality in supply chain is the goal changes all the time. So you say the goal is going to be somewhere between 4 minutes 50 seconds and 5 minutes 10 seconds. Yeah. I will randomly choose what that's going to be.
Yeah, there you
see
go.
If you can hit the target.
And that's why you're good at what you do, David, and I'm not. Go ahead, Kareem. Anything else to discuss at this point?
Yeah, I mean, basically, David, what kind of things do you have coming up in the future here? Are you going to be coming to the U.S.? Are you attending any conferences that are coming up? I know you do a lot in academia. What's kind of on your agenda these days?
So a few conferences coming up. I'm going to be in Boston for the S&OP and IBP event in May, middle of May, and then I'm going to be in Barcelona. That'll be nice.
I'll be there this week. I leave from Barcelona on Friday, actually.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Well, I'm going to be there for the Gartner Expo in June.
Perfect.
And then from an academic point of view, I have the privilege of teaching master's students on this kind of stuff. And the bit that I'm really passionate about is releasing creative and new research. So every master's student has to do their own dissertation. I launch them off on projects that are really fascinating. I love playing with some of this. So I had a student who did a project 2 years ago, which is now coming a bit to fruition, which was really looking at, can you deliver to a person rather than to a place? Because, now we track mobile phones. If you're willing to share your mobile phone position like people do with their families and their children, why can't we deliver to a person rather than a place?
Well, it's so funny because the first time I ever had that sort of an experience was in Shanghai about 4 or 5 years before Uber came to the United States. And I was in Shanghai and we were with a group of people. We were playing basketball somewhere in some area in Shanghai. And one of the guys who was there, I think it was an Australian or an American, said, all right, we done? Let's get out of here. And I was like putting my hand up in the air, like to try to hail down a cab, thinking it's New York. And the guy looks at me and says, what are you doing? And I said, what do you mean? He said, the car's coming right to where we are right here. And I said, what are you talking about? Because this was, again, like 4 years before Uber. And he's like, yeah, when they come, you just see the license plate and it's the same as what's on my phone on the app and blah, 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 blah. And it was the first time that I ever saw that like human geolocating like in practice, which is the same idea of what you're saying about delivery to a person walking around with their phone and just that drops out of the sky and just hits them in the head or whatever it's going to be. But yeah, I mean, I experienced that firsthand 4 years before Uber was even a thing here. That was a great, case study for me, seeing that in practice. So yes, I mean, for sure, it can happen, does happen, and it happens in a different way, but yes.
Yeah, and I think the outcome of that particular piece of research is, where was this going to be most valuable? And the surprising thing for me was I thought it might be in high value consumer items, something like a Gucci phone, where you're delivering it to a David Beckham of this world, and you hand it over, and he immediately hands his old phone back and picks up the new phone, and off he goes again. You could see that would have the kind of value to those kind of people. But the most strongest place where it was of interest was delivering engineering parts to large locations to an engineer. Hadn't been even on my radar screen as a thought or an idea.
Major privacy though, things.
Oh yeah.
I mean, major things around privacy, that Big Brother knows where you are physically at any time, whether it's, where you want to be known that you are, or you don't want to be known where you are, or whatever it is. I mean, not that isn't the case right now. We know that satellites can see a mosquito on the butt of a rhino in Africa if they really wanted to. But the reality of it is that, do we really want to feel that, know that, commercialize that? I mean, I have no idea. But privacy really just becomes a big thing there. And I mean, maybe in the end of the day, the reality of it is that as we all resign ourselves to this global technological infrastructure, the idea of privacy just changes. It's just not what it used to be. Privacy used to be something, and now privacy is going to be something else. It's like everyone's going to have to give up some part of their data to be able to do ABC and play on the internet, or even log onto our computers, or do whatever we have to do. But I mean, where does it stop? Where is the balancing act? And this is one of those many examples of
I think that's the difference between our generation, let me call it, and Gen Z as they come through, is they're quite happy to give away data for functionality. That's something they've been training with all the way through their teenage years. And now the reality is, as they start to step into business, so what do you mean we can't share our data with our customers?
Well, they share their lives. They share literally every single thing. They share what they ate for breakfast. They share every single thing. I've got a teen and one who's not a teen, and they're just like, what do you mean I can't share this, show this, post this? I'm like, because your whole existence doesn't have to be public. It doesn't have to be. They don't understand that. It's actually the opposite. They are applauded for doing this, and you shared your ABC journey, blah 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 blah. So there you go. I get it. I would like to definitely see you maybe in Boston when you come through in May. I should be around in the United States. Maybe we'll try to sync that up.
See if we can. Yeah,
for sure.
Well, look, David, before we go, and I know you're a busy man. Look, you're a busy man looking into the future. So or maybe you have to go back to the future. Who knows? But before you go, let people know how they can get a hold of you or keep up with you.
Well, probably the best way is LinkedIn. I'm an ardent user of LinkedIn. You'll find me on LinkedIn, but you'll also find me on most social. Dave Food's a pretty unusual name. In fact, I could probably encompass your whole audience in a piece of research that I'm doing. I don't know about you, Richard. You probably met people who've got your family name, who are not part of your family.
Yep.
I have never met anybody who's got my family name, Food, who's not part of my family. So I say to all my students, be part of my research. If you come across someone who's got my family name, contact me. I'm on LinkedIn, WeChat, Instagram. You'll find me on most platforms. So reach out to me and I will respond.
So just to be sure, it has to be food. It can't be some form of food.
No.
Might be a distant relative.
Can't be like David Lasagna. It has to be
right.
food.
You never know. It might have just been a branch. It might have been a branch off of your ancestry that suddenly went a different course. So
yeah, maybe.
Yeah, different course. You like that?
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes, very clever.
Yeah.
we got it. We got it.
And Kareem, how can people get a hold of you?
Just like David, I use LinkedIn a lot these days. I'm posting a lot of information there and insights. So it's Kareem Kafoury on LinkedIn. And then my company is The Atlas Network, where we help companies, small to mid-sized businesses, build supply chains and turn ideas into reality. So that's the best place for me.
Yep, and don't forget to like and follow our pages at the Supply Demand Show on LinkedIn and YouTube. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.